now call this meeting to order. Amy Callan.
Here.
James Bell.
Here.
Brian Chetney.
Here.
Tom DeCastro.
Here.
Brandon Legault.
Here.
Linda Serena.
Here.
Samuel Tripp.
Here.
At this time, if you would join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Tonight, no one has signed up to speak, and so now we will turn it over to the superintendent for his report, please.
Good evening. Tonight we have with us Brody Smith, who is with Bonchana Kincaid. Many of the board members know Brody from previous presentations. He's here to walk us through some of our responsibilities relative to the secret agreement for the capital project.
Thank you, Zard. If I pull up to the table here.
Absolutely, yes.
All right. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to the board today. As the superintendent mentioned, I'll be going through the seeker process. You have, as part of your documents on your screen, a couple different things that we'll be going through. One of them is a proposed resolution. Now, the wording of that resolution may change based on our conversation, or it may not. The second thing is an environmental assessment form. It's divided up into 3 parts. Part 1, the environmental assessment form, is background information about the proposed project. The project that we're discussing is the capital improvement project. Part 2 of the environmental assessment form is blank. There are 18 questions that the DEC has suggested that municipal bodies and boards like this go through when deciding how to weigh environmental factors. And then part 3 of the EAF at this point is still blank too, where you'll be asked to make a determination. So just a brief description of the secret process, because I know this board doesn't go through it at every meeting. The questions that we're going to go through as part of part 2, they are divided into 18 different subjects. Most of those subjects will be irrelevant to this project, and we'll move through very quickly. Some of them the board may decide to discuss a little bit more. These are issue spotting. Just because you answer yes, that there could be a potential impact with regard to any of those questions in part 2, doesn't mean that you're voting against the project or anything close to it. Ultimately, the issues that are identified as part of that process in part 2, you then make a determination in part 3, and that's really where you make your decision as to whether or not you're going to require further study to go forward with this project. You're going to be asked to make a decision in part 3 as to whether or not there, and this is the key legalese, whether there's going to be a significant adverse impact on the environment. So if you believe that there is the potential for a significant adverse impact on the environment, then you will issue what's called a positive declaration. A positive declaration will trigger the requirement for the district to have their engineers prepare an environmental impact statement to assess that potential significant adverse environmental impact. If you, after evaluating all the issues we spotted in part 2, where there could be a number of small impacts, you decide that none of them is a significant adverse impact on the environment, then you would issue what's called a negative declaration. A negative declaration will conclude the seeker process and allow for the project to go forward without the necessity for a formal environmental impact statement. So with that, I'm going to begin with part 2 of the EAF, and that's the one that looks like this. A bunch of boxes to be checked or not checked. I also will point out, and you may have noticed this if you looked over part 1 or have some background in this project from the past, where it was described in part 1. There was extensive seeker done on this project in 2012, and an argument could be made that you don't need to do this now. But out of an abundance of caution, and in order to protect the environment and protect the interests of the district, it was my recommendation that we go through these questions now, if nothing else but to make sure that, in the opinion of this board, nothing has changed. And I don't think it has. I have in front of me, and I've reviewed before this meeting, the minutes from your 2012 where this board issued a negative declaration on the project. Has the project changed a little bit? Yes, but all the changes I after discussing with the engineer, are reductions in impact, not increases. If anything, it's been scaled back a little bit. So,
It's your opinion from 2012 to 2018 now, that there hasn't been any changes and we came up with a negative declaration, which would conclude the secret process, but we're gonna follow this process to ensure, even though there hasn't been any changes in the plan or the environmental impact, we're gonna go through this process.
yes, well, and I think the way that I've written the resolution is to affirm what was done in 2012 and to reach conclusions now based on your own knowledge and information. So I thought that was in the best interest of, number one, the environment, number two, to protect the district's and this board's interests, because it is conceivable, though I don't think that's happened in this project, it is conceivable that where you have a 5-year break between a seeker approval and the initiation of a project, that situations could change, that with the build-out, all these assumptions in 2012 were based on a build-out date that has now been pushed back 5 years. So I think it makes sense to go through this and affirm what was done before, or say that it was wrong. But I think it's in the board's best interest to go through this process.
Brody, do you have any information on why we did it in 2012? What were we doing? Was there a capital project?
Yeah, it was the same capital
Same
project.
capital project, but we never followed through with the project.
Correct.
Same project we're doing now, but we put everything together back in 2012 and it ended there.
It just never went to vote, is that what it would be?
Yeah, and I think the
That's
reasoning
what-
was not, it didn't have anything to do with environmental impact.
Didn't come to the board. Had to do with money.
Gotcha.
Had to do with money. That's
Gotcha.
right. It was
Okay.
money, it was money.
So you went through all the processes, you prepared everything, got the real numbers, and then decided it was too much of an impact for the taxpayers and pulled it away.
Yeah.
Understand,
That's correct.
okay.
So the scope has changed quite a bit from 2012 to 2018.
Yeah, it has changed a bit, but it's been, I think, reduced in every case, not
Mhm.
expanded. So I think the environmental footprint, if anything, has gotten smaller, not worse.
Thank you.
So beginning with question number 1, which is impact on land. And I have in front of me some notes that I'll read on each that, were prepared in 2012 and I've reviewed with the engineer, just to try to expedite this discussion. So number 1, impact on the land. The question is proposed to this board is, will the action involve construction on or physical alteration of the land surface of the proposed site? I recommend the conclusion that there will be a small impact on the land because construction on the existing school campus will occur on land where the depth of the water table is less than 3 feet, and some of the land is identified as having bedrock within 3 feet of the existing ground surface. The impact is not large because of mitigation measures during the design and construction phases of the project, and because of the regulatory agency reviews that may request additional mitigation in the future. There will also be a small impact on the land because construction will continue longer than 1 year. This has the potential for creating soil disturbance and erosion. However, this impact should not be considered large because the construction will occur in individual parts, minimizing the areas of disturbance and never allowing for more than 5 acres to be disturbed at one time. This construction will also be conducted pursuant to a stormwater pollution prevention plan, which will be implemented prior pursuant to a DEC permit. So, in summation, I recommend that the board answer, because there will be ground disturbance in connection with the athletic fields, mainly tearing up the old turf, putting on the new turf, taking out the old tracks, putting on the new tracks, that the answer to this question be yes. But I think that when going through the sub-questions, A through H, for the reasons that I just stated, that the answer for all of those should be no or a small impact. Are there any questions about what I stated or any other opinions? Is the board generally in agreement with that approach?
Yes.
The second question has to do with the impact on geological features. It is my recommendation that you check the box no on this. After discussions with the engineer, we cannot identify any potential impacts on significant geological features. Is the board in agreement with that?
Yes.
As far as impacts on surface water, I recommend that the board check yes, but I do believe that all the impacts would be small or no impact for the following reasons. There will be a small to moderate impact on water because of increased peak runoff due to the proposed roof and pavement surfaces. The impact is not considered potentially large because of existing environmental control requirements and design measures that will take advantage of current site conditions. As a result of the proposed site land cover conditions, there will be an alteration with current drainage flows and patterns. Mitigation will include on-site stormwater management systems to be developed to collect surface runoff from paved and lawn areas. Building roof leaders will connect to the storm and sewer system. Erosion control measures, and then also temporary erosion control measures in conjunction with the general permit that'll be issued in connection with the construction. For those reasons, I recommend that all the sub-questions be answered no under question number 3. Is the board generally in agreement with that?
Yes.
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 Would that one have anything to do with the flooding down on where the new field, I know you said about the drainage?
That's a good question.
Why wouldn't that make it a large impact versus not an impact?
But it's, you made mention to recognize that the engineer would design a particular system that would accommodate to not do that. At least that's the way I interpreted it.
That's true, and those are both good observations, and I can tell you to review the resolution, because I talked about it a little bit in the resolution. There is a separate question, number 5, that deals specifically with flooding.
Okay,
And I think it'd be wise to have a discussion on that in connection with the flooding,
okay,
flooding question.
great, thanks.
In terms of groundwater, I recommend that the answer be no on groundwater. After conferring with the engineer, I don't think there's any potential impacts on groundwater. Is the board generally in agreement with that?
Yes.
With regard to question number 5, that's a discussion I think the two of you want to have. And it has been brought to my attention that there's generally a flooding problem on the location of the new football field. And you saw in the resolution, and then also in the project background, I asked some additional questions to the engineer about the specific measures that would be taken in connection with dealing with that flooding, which I can go through more detail now. I know that the engineers already presented to you at the last meeting, so I won't if you feel like you have the information that you need. But in summary, there'll be the installation of tanks and a widening of outfall pipes to try to deal with the flooding problem. From my point of view, from a seeker point of view, I think the measures certainly will not exacerbate flooding. The engineering controls are expected to improve the flooding condition, and for that reason, I would recommend that though we should check yes, that this area is affected by flooding, that it would all be no or small impacts to the sub-questions. But I'd like to elicit the board's opinions and discussion on that subject, in terms of the adequacy of the mitigation measures.
I agree that it's a yes. I mean, it's obvious that there's a flooding issue there, but we've had multiple discussions with the engineer previous to their presentation at the last meeting as to their design as to tanks and or bladders that they were gonna develop underneath the all-purpose field to be able to handle the demand that may be put on the water that comes onto the fields, as well as consuming some of the municipal water that is in the street that comes down the hill by virtue of gravity. They're gonna consume some of it and exhaust it out at a slower rate than it would be. So those bladders are actually going to do exactly as you say, I believe, to help manage the problem and the municipal's problem that they have in the street as compared to what we are creating in the field.
Plus, they're gonna raise the field
Correct.
3 feet.
Exactly, yeah.
It's gonna be built up in 3 feet from where it is right now.
Yeah.
Has the city been made aware of?
They're crystal clear,
Crystal clear.
of the problem that they have going on there.
I mean, if anything, I think it'll result, like you said, improvement to the general flooding condition on the property, but also make for a more safe playing surface.
Yeah.
That'd be built up 3 feet in a new
Yeah.
new surface
Yep.
for the students.
And then the parking lot, I think he said that there was talk of maybe doing a retaining wall, is that correct? Because the parking lot won't be elevated.
Yeah.
So the tanks are only gonna be under the field, right, not
Yeah.
under the,
The parking lot will in essence be slightly elevated from the current
It'll be
field, so
elevated
it will
too.
be.
okay,
But you're right, he did talk about a secondary retaining wall that would help to not only keep the municipal water out, but also help us to retain the water that we're funneling to the bladder system that
Control our own.
controls our own water, so we don't.
And that's our
contribute to the
responsibility,
problem.
that's all
Right.
that's, and to do that, and he made mention that it would be a field decision as well, is that, you know, you can take all the survey that you want, and you can get all the topography, but when you start digging it up as to how many courses the retaining wall could or
Yeah.
would be, it's difficult to
But to
determine
Jim's
that.
point, to your point, Jim, the mitigating elements that we're putting in terms of not contributing to the already, to the issues that are already in place relative to municipal water. In fact, we might be helping to contribute to
Helping to
helping the
resolve,
current problem.
yeah,
Right,
exactly.
so the city's
Yeah.
gonna be in better shape.
Just in case people are having trouble conceptualizing what we're talking, I know you're all familiar with the fields. I did print out an aerial, what it looks like now, and then also copies of the proposed change in the configuration. It'd be helpful for you to look at it during this conversation. So if you look at them side by side, you can see where the football field is shifting to, it used to be a softball field. And we're some on the, top right-hand corner, you can see where there was looks like designed for lacrosse, and the aerial that I'm showing you is gonna become a softball, the new softball field. So, given the conversation that we just had, it's my recommendation that for all the sub-questions, the answer no or small impact, because I believe it is the expectation of this board, based on this conversation, that the mitigation measures will improve the flooding issues.
There you go.
Is the general agreement with the board?
Yes.
The next question talks about impacts on the air. It's my recommendation that the board answer no to that question. There's no anticipated impacts on the air. Is the board generally in agreement with that, Jim?
Yeah.
The next question is impacts on plants and animals. I recommend that the board answer this yes, and I'll read a little bit of background provided by the engineer. I do think that all the sub-questions are going to be no or small impact for the following reasons. There will be small to moderate impact on plants and animals because of proposed clearing and grubbing activities. This will impact approximately 4 acres of land, not on the high school site, by the way, this is on the other properties. No wetlands or marsh areas, caves, woodlands, or unique landforms exist within this area. Areas that are disturbed will not be converted to parking and or building, but will be revegetated. There are 5 known occurrences of federal listed endangered species in the area: bald-eared eagles, piper, plover, which is a bird, the Indiana bat, bog turtle, and the lake sturgeon. So there's no anticipated impacts or loss of habitat area for those types of species in the area where there will be grubbing and disturbance of the land. The engineer goes on to talk about the due diligence that he did in terms of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the DEC mapping. So for those reasons, I recommend that the sub-questions be answered no or small impact. Is the board generally in agreement with that?
Yes.
The next question is impacting agricultural resources. I recommend that the board answer no to this question. There will be no impact on agricultural resources. Is the board generally in agreement with that?
Yes.
The next question is impact on aesthetic resources. I recommend that the board answer no to that question. We don't anticipate any negative impacts on aesthetic resources. Is the board generally in agreement with that?
Yes.
Stop me, by the way, if there's any questions about any of these. The next question is historic and archaeological resources. This requires a little bit of explanation. At this stage, we're not aware of any historic or archaeological resources that would be impacted by this project. But in the procedure that we follow with the SED to get the building permit, it's going to require continued dialogue with state parks and SHPO. And that, as part of that process, if any archaeological resources are unearthed, there's a system that where we would go through as part of the building permit to address those concerns. But at this stage, there's really no reason to believe that. As you know, all the areas where new athletic fields are being installed are previously used as athletic fields. So it would be unlikely that there'd be
If
significant
there was
archaeological
an issue
issues.
that would have come up long ago when all the construction in the area was going on.
Yep.
I would think
Initially.
so.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for that reason, I recommend that you answer to question number 10, no. Is the board generally in agreement with that?
Yes.
Yes.
Impact on open space and recreation. I think that this could only possibly enhance open space and recreation space for the community, so I recommend that the board answer no to that question as well. Is the board generally in agreement with that?
Yes.
Number 12 deals with critical environmental areas. None of the project is in a critical environmental area, so I recommend that the answer be no to that. Is the board generally in agreement?
Yes.
The next question is impact on transportation. I recommend that you check yes for transportation for the reason that this project will add approximately 250 parking spaces to the lot. But for the following reason, I think that the answer to the sub-questions would all be no or a small impact, because the type of construction that's being undertaken by the district is not going to increase vehicle trips, in my opinion and the opinion of the engineer. It's just adding more parking that people will be going to the football game anyway. The engineer has observed that it's very common during football games and other athletic events for people to park on the street in the right-of-way, creating a dangerous situation, and the addition of the 250 additional parking spaces could only help to alleviate that and improve the situation. So for that reason, I recommend that all the sub-questions be answered no or small impact. Is the board generally in agreement with that?
Yes.
Yes.
The next is impact on energy. I recommend that the board answer no to that question. Is it generally in agreement with that?
Yes.
Yes.
Number 15 is impact on noise, odor, and light. I recommend that the board answer yes to this question because of the installation of 4 light poles in connection with the football field. The old football field, there's 4 light poles there that'll be left in place to service the other athletic activities, which will continue in that location. But there will be 4 new poles on the football field. Now, as part of that process, they will be mounted and aimed at the field. They will be equipped with cutoffs to reduce the amount of light that would escape laterally, potentially onto other areas of the school or into neighboring properties. And there'll also be a photometric study that'll be performed once they install the lights. So what that means is they'll go and they'll take measurements on the field to make sure, A, that the field is evenly lit in order to be effective for the student athletes, but also to make sure that an inordinate amount of light isn't spilling off of the sides. That photometric survey will also go around the perimeter of the field. So for that reason, I recommend that the answer to the sub-questions, and I should say noise, we don't anticipate this is going to increase the number of games or the number of spectators. So for those reasons, I recommend that the sub-questions be answered no or small impact. Is the board generally in agreement with that?
Yes.
In terms of human health, I recommend that this question be answered no. This has to do with projects which have the potential for toxic or hazardous materials, and that's not this project. Is the board generally in agreement with that?
Yes.
Yes.
And the last 2 questions have to do with community character and community planning. I recommend that you answer no to both of those. These areas were previously used as athletic fields and will continue to be used as athletic fields in the future. And for those reasons, I believe that the board should answer no to all the sub-questions. Is the board generally in agreement with that?
Yes.
Okay, so that concludes part 2. The last stage here for the EAF is part 3. Part 3 looks like this. And this is where, as I said prior to going through the part 2 process, this is where you make your decision to issue a negative or a positive declaration. As part of our discussion, this board has discussed all the potential impacts. That's the reason for going through those questions and answering those questions. The comments that I gave that were elicited from the engineer are written here, and I'd recommend that these would be attached to your part 3 decision, whatever you decide, to give some of the reasoning that was put before the board in making its decision. So now I'll ask the board if there's anyone willing to make a motion that this project will result in no significant adverse impact on the environment, and therefore an environmental impact statement need not be prepared. This would be the negative declaration that I described to you before. By the way, before anyone makes that motion, the alternative is you thought that there was something in here that really requires more study and there's a potential for a significant adverse environmental impact. If you believe that that's the case, you should vote no to this motion if someone makes this motion, because right now this would be a motion for a negative declaration.
So moved.
Second.
So my recommendation would be for the board then to vote, either in favor of the neg deck or against it at this point.
In favor of a negative declaration.
So
Make sure
do a
we're heading the
negative
right
deck
way.
and no further study. Yeah.
Yeah, all right, I just wanna make sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do we need a new motion for that?
No, I think that's the motion he was asking.
You're right,
I'm
that's
sorry,
what,
I'm
I
sorry,
think that's
Madam.
what he moved,
Yeah,
right?
so we need
That's-
to-
So all in
We
favor?
need all
Yeah,
in favor.
that's what we're looking for.
Pardon me?
All in favor.
You need to call it.
Okay, just one moment, let me just write this down. Amy Callan,
Yes.
James Bell,
Yes.
Brian Chetney,
Yes.
Tom DeCastro,
Yes.
Brandon Legault,
Yes.
Linda Sereno,
Yes.
Samuel Tripp,
Yes.
all in favor.
And the last thing, I appreciate you bearing with me. I know there's a lot of a lawyer talking at you. The resolution in front of you, this sets forth the background that I went over. And one other thing that we hadn't talked about yet in this resolution is that most of the project, most of this capital project involves improvements inside the various buildings, the various campuses, which are listed in the resolution.
Is
Things
that,
like,
that, when you say the resolution, you're part one project information?
He's under Board of Education
This is
resolution.
it.
So
Under
yeah,
Board of
just vote that.
Education.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is your this is your general overarching
It's under
resolution
Board of Ed 5.
about the whole project. So remember, the project encompasses not just the athletic fields, but the Layton Elementary, Oswego High School, Oswego Middle School, Minetto, Riley, Kingsford Park, and Fitzhugh aspects of the project, and that includes, the reconfiguration of interior spaces in those buildings, HVAC improvements, and various other building improvements. In this resolution, the way it's written now, I consider all of those things to be type 2, meaning they're routine renovation, repair, and maintenance of the school building, not requiring seeker review. And so then, what I do is I cut the project in half and I take the athletic field portion out of it. And the athletic field portion is what we just did part 2 about. And so this resolution does 2 things. One, it declares the renovation part of the project type 2 and declares that no further seeker review is required. And then 2, if you look letter B in the resolution, it goes through and talks about what we just did, going through the EAF, saying that the athletic field project is type 1, but that there's no significant adverse environmental impact. And then it talks about the conversation that we just had. You'll note in paragraph 4, it discusses the impacts to the land, the timing of the construction that we discussed. Paragraph 5, it notes the 250 parking spaces and the background information that we discussed. Number 6 talks about the lights. Number 7 talks about the flooding. And I think those are the key issues that that the board wanted to discuss, and those are the things that were in the resolution. So my recommendation is, if you agree with all that, that the board move and vote on this resolution, and that would conclude your seeker process for the entire project.
Thank you, Brody. That was very
Thank
helpful.
you. Yep.
So I think you should vote on that resolution.
Right now?
Yeah.
You're sitting there?
So
Yeah,
move
you
it.
should do that now.
Motion, Jim, second,
I'll second.
roll call vote, Amy Callan,
Yes.
James Bell,
Yes.
Tom DeCastro,
Yes.
Brian Chetney,
Yes.
Brandon Legault,
Yes.
Linda Sereno,
Yes.
Sam Tripp,
Yes.
all in favor.
That concludes the seeker process for the capital improvement project. You're now free, if it's the pleasure of the board, to move on to the bonding portion of it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brody.
Thank you for indulging me and for being so patient.
Thank you.
I've never seen that one. I go through it.
I do have the bonders, I can go through that too.
Do you need him to go through the bonding resolution as well?
Sure.
Okay, yeah, I'd be happy to. So the next step is the,
You almost got it.
You started the car.
the next step, now that you've completed your environmental review, would be the adoption of a resolution. This board may act at this meeting now about the financing. So after you adopt the seeker resolution, the board may adopt the bond resolution. So the bond resolution looks like this. This one.
Board of Education B.
Yeah.
So what the bond resolution has, it has the amount of money that the district would then look to borrow. And I'll read section 1 out loud, that's the key section. The school district is hereby authorized to undertake the reconstruction, improvement, rehabilitation, repair, furnishing, and equipping of Oswego High School, Oswego Middle School, Fitzhugh Park Elementary School, Kingsford Park Elementary School, Riley Elementary School, Layton Elementary School, and Minetto Elementary School, including site work and acquisition of original furnishings, equipment, machinery, and apparatus required for the purposes for which such buildings are to be used, at a total estimated maximum cost not to exceed $60,180,000. The plan for financing such maximum estimated cost shall consist of the following: $56,180,000 in serial bonds, the appropriation and expenditure of up to $4 million from the school's capital reserve fund is also authorized. The anticipated time of usefulness for the aforesaid improvements would be 30 years, so the financing would most likely be through a 30-year bond. As you go through the other terms of this resolution, there would be the temporary use of available funds of the district for some of the upfront costs. It's reasonably expected that would then be reimbursed through the bonding process. And there's some more detail about the process you go through a bond given there and some regulatory sites in the local finance law. If the board does decide to act on the bonding resolution now, the next step under the laws that apply to city school districts would be, which is different than other school districts. You would vote on the bond now, and then you would after that you would vote on this one, which is to call the special meeting where people would come to vote. It's the exact opposite of like a suburban school district. Yep. So you would ask then for the voters to approve the bond resolution if you pass it tonight at that special meeting. So the order of considering these things is first the bond resolution, and next the resolution to call. If you do decide to approve the bond resolution, next you would look at this document, which would be to call the vote.
Is there a particular logic behind that as to why, I mean, if you ask the people first out in the country, but.
There's no logic behind it, it is the way the law is structured by the state.
All right,
So-
just curious if there was.
Education law.
Yeah.
I will neither defend nor criticize it, but it is
It is
just a
what it
different
is.
procedure
I
than
got
we set
that.
up for other
Okay.
school districts.
Yep.
Just like that one time, only the country schools voted on the budget, city schools.
Right, they didn't, yeah, they didn't get a shot, yeah. Okay, no, that's
That's the way
fine.
it was when I first started teaching.
At this time, would the board motion for the bond resolution?
Move it.
A second?
Second.
Roll call, Amy Callan,
Yes.
James Bell,
Yes,
Brian Chetney,
Yes.
Tom DeCastro,
Yes.
Brandon Legault,
Yes.
Linda Serena,
Yes.
Sam Tripp.
Yes.
The board has approved that resolution.
Rosie, would you recommend that we continue through resolution 3, which is to call for this special district meeting for the vote,
I do,
and stay within this component of our agenda?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I recommend you do that next, particularly because of the timing. If you want to have it on, right now it's set up to happen on March 6th. So I think
Yep.
you'd be wise to do that this meeting if you want to keep that.
Okay.
Okay, if I could have a motion for that resolution?
Move it.
Second.
Roll call, Amy Callan,
Yes.
James Bell,
Yes.
Brian Chetney,
Yes.
Tom DeCastro,
Yes.
Brandon Legault,
Yes.
Linda Sereno,
Yes.
Samuel Tripp.
Yes.
The board has approved that resolution.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I will, leave the necessary documents to be signed, the EAF form needs to be signed, and then I'll get back to me and I'll do the necessary publication of it, but I'll then, take care of that, your ledger.
Thank you very much. So we're gonna take that consent agenda.
Does the superintendent have any other items for the superintendent's report tonight?
No, that was it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Next would be the consent agenda, minutes of the regular Board of Education meeting of December 19th, 2017, and the special education report of January 4th, 2017. If I could have a motion,
Move it.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We have already gone through the resolutions for the Board of Education, and we will move on to curriculum, which has no items for tonight.
Did
Bringing,
we, excuse me,
Sure.
Sharon, did we do section 6 where we're setting up our,
Schools.
yeah,
We'll go, we'll,
Yeah.
we'll start now under, curriculum and then work through the unfinished items under the board.
okay.
But those were the 3 required elements that Brody wanted to keep together.
no items for curriculum tonight, so we would move to personnel with Dr. Sweeney.
A, professional staff recommendation, a resignation for Phyllis Mazuka, who's a teaching assistant at the Oswego Middle School, which was effective 12/22.
Questions? Motion?
Move it. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next, I'm sorry.
B, professional staff recommendation, Devin Hutchison, who's a teaching assistant who is moving into that position at the middle school. And because of the new language in the OCTA contract, that's why she does have an effective date of 9/1. She finished her certification requirements for her level 1 teaching assistant certification.
Questions? Motion?
Move it.
Second.
I'm sorry, second?
Second.
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
C, extra compensatory position recommendation, after-school homework helpers at Frederick Layton School, as listed and on a per diem basis.
Any questions?
We did a slew of these, were they at different schools?
Yeah.
I believe
okay.
they were.
Why does it come out that way? Like, why don't we just do all of them? Why does it go like school and it's different times and different lists and it
Gary?
just seems,
Because they do come from different pots of money. This is, out of our general budget, that we do have a program, we keep, money aside for schools to run after-school programs at the elementary level. Some of them have been from federal grants, like Fitchy Park has had, some after-school programs running because of their federal funding.
right?
So, and then there are the title-funded ones that are at different schools, and once this grant kicks in, the next one, you're gonna see even more, so
Okay.
we'll keep
So it
adding.
really
Sometimes
depends on
it
the
depends on
funding.
Yeah,
the
kinda.
funding flow.
Yeah,
We know about
right.
it at the start of the year or
Right.
once we're into the year.
And then, so maybe you don't see it over here, but you wanna offer the same opportunity, so you have to take it out of a different, I see.
that
Okay.
makes sense.
Yeah, that makes more sense.
And principals submit those recommendations too,
Yeah.
and they might not
The
all
time of
come in
year.
at the same time.
Right, based on needs,
Yeah.
it could be
When we
different,
get them, we
yeah,
put them quickly,
Right.
put them on an agenda.
I got you.
And these
Okay.
mostly are, the principals do closer towards testing time, they do the after
Oh,
homework
okay.
help when they want to keep
Okay.
kids after.
And then it's not like all of these people are doing it, it's based
No,
on
it's
how
based
many
on- right.
kids
Right.
need it and then how many
And then
teachers.
it's a rotating schedule,
Right,
there
you
might
have
be
to have-
some people who could do it some days and not others.
Right, if you have 10 of them, maybe only 3 of them are available to help with whatever, so
Kind of
that's how
have
you,
a pool to
I
build your
got you.
schedule.
Is there like a ratio of how many students to teacher, or how do you figure that out?
Probably dependent on the program
Okay.
and the need for why they're offering the after-school help, and whether it's a larger group or it's a little bit more focused.
Thank you.
Could I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
D, support staff recommendation, a leave of absence. Beverly DeLong recently moved from a position in the business office and replaced Jody Smith in Carrie's office. And because she's working in a new title, she can take a leave of absence from her previous title.
Move it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
E, support staff recommendation, probationary. Aaron Wood will be moving into a custodial worker position at the middle school.
Any questions? Motion?
Move it.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
F, support staff recommendation, permanent. Very similarly to our last meeting, sometimes we have permanently appointed employees who are moving from a less than full-time status to a full-time status. So Sarah Pike, who was at transportation, this is a lateral move for her, but she is increasing from 6 hours a day to 8 hours a day. And she'll be at the high school.
Any questions?
Can I ask a question? Just, I know that the title says custodial worker. Is that just inside the building? Do they work outside the building? Do they help with the snow? They-
Yes.
Yeah, so we have all hands on deck doing
Yeah.
that kind of stuff.
Yeah, the difference is you have custodians and you have custodial workers. It has something to do with whether they're hourly or salary.
Right, it's in the
And then
title
there-
that,
There are
yeah,
different,
yeah.
there are 6-hour custodial workers, 8-hour custodial workers, but they all would do general snow removal, sidewalks, emergency exits, things like that.
Yeah, right,
But heavily assisted by the buildings and grounds folks.
yeah.
The custodians tend to do the snow removal at their home building,
I
whereas
see.
the buildings and grounds are
They're all over the place.
They
I
do
gotcha.
walkways,
Okay.
parking lots,
Right,
stuff
okay,
like that.
okay, I was just curious.
Yep.
How have we been with that?
We're running out of space.
Yeah.
The
I
delay
get
the
that.
other day was largely due to the fact that we have so much snow now.
Right.
That removing it takes a very long time because we're running out of places to pile it.
Mhm.
We do
And the city's
have,
gotta be having the same problem.
Oh, yeah, we've, yeah,
Yeah, we're gonna start
Spend-
dumping ours into the river.
we spent
I
a
was gonna say, do we
ridiculous
have a
amount of
place,
money
like, I know
last
the
week.
city moves the snow out, like, do we have a, do we
Yes.
do that so that we can see?
Dave
you know?
Crisafulli has, last week, ordered large payloaders to come in to, pick up some of the snow and move it elsewhere.
Oh,
That's
okay.
all,
So-
yeah, he had Lizark over in the
Mhm.
big lot over
Yeah.
here, and that's handy and over there, but it's incredibly expensive.
Yeah.
And it just keeps coming, so.
But
Stay tuned.
because of the
Yeah.
safety
It's
issue though,
early.
because of the height of
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
snowbanks,
Right.
that was all that we could do to make sure that the kids could have a safe place to walk.
Yeah, well, and we've, yeah, at the city level, we've created a focus at each of the schools, we're writing to get them cleared, because we see kids coming off of a 6-foot snowbank and
Yeah.
coming
You know,
down it, so we,
Speaking of snow, whose responsibility would it be to clear sidewalks where there's bus drop-offs? I know, there's a couple of them right in my neighborhood where the kids have to wait in the road for the bus.
it is the homeowner's responsibility to take care of the sidewalk and the curb in front of them, unless the sidewalk is immediately adjacent to the curb where there is no green space and only in a residential district. Can you tell I've been reviewing that?
Out of what book?
So for
Two
example,
49-9, Part B.
There you go.
on the corner of Third and Allen, like a corner lot where kids might be standing on the
Yeah.
corner.
Yeah.
Would
No,
it be the
it's-
home that sits on the corner?
That is
or
correct, it is their responsibility. As
And
it
if
is,
they don't do the responsibility, then what happens? How does it get cleaned?
then somebody would call us, right, and several have. And we would respond by sending the code officer out there. They would write a complaint or a violation. First, they would try and call the person. If it is complete negligence where you haven't seen any snow been removed at any part, this has been going on for a week and a half, 2 weeks now. And if they haven't done anything and, you know, they're just an egregious offender, then we resolve to either taking one of the DPW workers with the tool cat and the snow blower, they go down, they clear it out, or we subcontract, hire it out and have them do that. We're creating that process now. It is, we do have to provide, if the snow falls, they have until 7 o'clock that evening to remedy the snow. After we recognize it and we write a complaint, then they have whatever remedy time we put on it, and it can be as little as 3 hours, as much as 4 days. It depends on where it is, how it is, what effect it has, it's kind of our discretion as to how we deal with it. And so,
So what happens if it's an old lady like me that can't shovel anymore?
then we will come, if you have not dealt with the responsibility that you have of owning a home inside the city and dealing with the snow, and you do not have the money to do it, then we will do it for you and it'll be put on your taxes.
I know we have a lot of
Yeah.
elderly people.
There is, but those are not our focus.
So then, so it's not a fine, it's a fee, so like they're basically.
No, it's a fine,
A fine,
it's a fine.
I
that
think
covers
the-
the cost.
I
of
think the house or
getting
the
them.
location that Dean's referring to, I believe that house is vacant and has the sidewalk and intersection haven't been third down.
I just pulled that, I just made that.
Well, I hadn't know about it because it's my granddaughter's pickup, and I know she has to wait and go and get strapped off and.
Tell me where you are, where is it?
You know where,
We're kinda heading
where
off the
Ellen
rails
feeds-
here, sorry.
feeds into Third. I don't know how to describe it.
Ellen.
Yeah.
Third and Allen, there's a yellow house on the corner next to Molinary.
Oh, yeah, vacant.
It's the Molinary corner.
Yep, okay.
I think that person's
Opposite
probably in
Molinary.
Florida in the summer, or in the winter.
In the
And
winter.
the house that's kitty
Yeah.
corner from that too. would
Well,
be
they have
on
a
the-
responsibility,
On the
that's all.
northwest corner, that's.
And
the
if that's a
vacant house.
pickup,
Oh, is it? Oh, that's.
you know what I
yeah,
would
we're
want
not the
tonight?
corner.
I didn't even think about that.
People are gone.
Is,
Could you give me all the pickup points?
Yes.
Dean, if this is a safety
We
issue,
can do it from
Yeah.
transportation.
There you go.
I
Right.
totally believe
Yeah,
it.
Send
because
that-
that would be.
Is there
send that
any
to
way,
me.
bus
That'll
drivers
help.
can't see this every single day? Is there any way they can keep a record of drop-offs that aren't cleaned and maybe we can submit it to the city? And
Yeah.
And she was almost in tears
Nancy, do
the
you have
other
that?
day.
For me?
She said to
Sam
me,
said
what
maybe
do I do if
drivers
it snows
report
again?
Tom,
Pile it up.
what they see,
Okay.
we can periodically
Start a
report
fire.
it to the city.
Right, okay,
They can
perfect.
follow up for us.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a great.
Answer
Yeah,
a real quick
if
question.
you-
Yes.
Very quick. This is actually a great conversation because the answer to what you do when that happens is you write nasty messages on our Facebook. Should we tell these people to call the city if they're unhappy, if they're like saying that
Yes.
our kid, like,
Yeah.
well, our kids can't get through because
Yeah,
some.
it's a life safety issue, which
Okay.
is what we
Yeah.
respond to.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cool,
Yeah.
because that's
Good
good to
response.
know.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Could I have a motion, please?
Move it.
forgot
Move
what
it.
we're doing.
Yeah, I know,
Voting
we're
on Sarah
custodial
White
worker.
Oh.
at
Yeah.
the-
Sorry.
At the high school.
That's totally,
Could I have
No,
a
but
second, please?
yeah.
I
Second.
think that's a good conversation.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
And lastly, G, substitute and temporary employees, our typical batch of sub-teachers, tutors, lifeguards, typists.
Dylan Lord just coming back to us.
He is, he's
Yes.
emailed me a few times, he's very excited about being a sub for us.
Could I have a motion, please?
Move it.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next is finance with Nancy Squires.
And glad to say I only have one on the agenda. And it is a budget transfer from state aided software to state aided equipment for $1,344.11. The reason that this is on the agenda, I usually only bring transfers that are $2,000 and over because it is going into an equipment line. We can't just transfer into an equipment line, it has to be board approved.
Is this something that, I mean, here we are, first meeting in 2018, is this 2017 money, or is this 2018 money, and we're,
17,
This is
18.
17-18 money.
okay, so that.
For this
it-
current fiscal year.
And so the movement doesn't, this is a budget from adopting it at the beginning of the year?
Correct.
Gotcha, okay.
Mhm. Could I have a motion, please?
Move it. Move it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next on the agenda is items from board members. Would we have any items tonight?
I have a couple things. I wanted to say thank you to all the folks over at FitU for doing, I forget what they called it, the reading that we did. I know some of us went over and we read to the elementary students, and it was really cool. I actually read in my cousin's classroom, and the kids were super cute. I brought 3 books in, and I was like, are you okay if I read 3? And they were excited, and then, and they're all hugging me, and they were so cute. And then they, as I was leaving, one of the girls says, so what are your plans for tomorrow? You think you could come back? So it was
Sorry
really
about
cute.
that.
It was fun. So,
Sorry, Karen.
I wanted to thank, that was a great program that they did that. The other thing is I had a couple of announcements. As you guys know, I sit on the board for the Oswego County School Board Association. We just had our meeting last week. And we talked about a couple things that I needed to bring back to you guys. One of them is, I know some of us went to the meeting, when was that? In September, when we went to the Ice House, where all the different school board members were there. And obviously that costs money, and we don't pay right now any dues. So what their suggestion, or our suggestion is if every school board in Oswego County pays $200, that it would go into a fund, and that it would pay for events like that. And it would be, obviously, it's a minimal amount, but what we'd be asking is that the payment would be made in July, so that, you know, it would be built into the budget next year. So I just wanted to see what you guys thought about that. I know we also talked about what we all thought the attendance was at the function, and anything that you guys would like to see in the future or not see or whatever. You know, I don't know what you guys think about it, but.
I think it's a good idea. I think it offers an opportunity for everybody to get together. I think it's probably important to let everybody know, you guys know, but that $200 is not for consumables.
Food.
Right, yeah. Yeah.
It's not for that. It's for the venues and for a place to get together and to share different ideas.
Network, like NISBA's there, so we
Yeah.
have a lot of opportunities to.
It just offers the ability to share ideas.
Mhm.
And I think it's good, and I think $200 is a very reasonable investment
Yeah.
into having those connections with the other.
And
Just-
another suggestion that we had said, because we were trying to, like, how can we get all of us to network? Because it seemed like, you know, different school districts branched off just amongst themselves. And so we're like, how do we change that so that people really network with one another? One of the ideas that we came up with was maybe if we kind of polled all the school board members prior to the meeting, like, what is something you'd like NISBA to do, maybe a presentation on? And then make it kind of interactive so that everybody would offer scenarios from their own school district and bring it there, and then we could hear what other people are doing on whatever topic it was that we decided was, you know, an interesting topic. So I thought that was a good idea too.
There already is a budget line for Board of Education.
Okay,
So just be a matter of enhancing
Writing a
that
check.
by a
Okay.
couple $100.
great.
Should be easy, we probably have that money now.
If there's any feedback I give to them too is, I've gotten that event the last couple of years really for my other job.
Mhm.
And I think some people go for that reason, and I think the networking part, if it could be expanded beyond
Yes.
that. I mean, because even, I know somebody from my staff had contacted with you just from the Novellas piece and Camp Hollis, you know,
Right.
so just the networking where in the end it helps all the students. And,
Yes, absolutely.
You know, so that when they can communicate that way, I think that's just something to consider down the road.
Okay, awesome. And then we had a couple of, like, program reports. Greg Hilton, another one of the board members, he also works for Hudamaki. And so he's setting up a presentation and tour of Hudamaki. There will also be people from the P-TECH program. And what we're going to do is send out an invite to all board members and superintendents. But because of, you know, where it is, we need to do RSVPs. So that's kind of exciting. I think that'd be neat to go and learn firsthand and see what they're offering to our students. So that is on January 29th at 6 p.m. So if you guys were interested, that's the date. And then the next one is March 29th at 6, and that would be in Sandy Creek. And that has to do with food allergies and their impacts on districts. And that's going to have a full panel of, let's see, they have teachers, parents, health services, legal aspects, food service, et cetera. And it'll be an opportunity for us to understand, you know, what's going on within our schools dealing with food allergies and what we can do to make the situation better for all of our students. And that's on March 29th. And then the last thing that we talked about with our group is a legislative forum. It's city. It's going to be held on February 3rd from 9 to 11. And then the other thing is Dave Cordone, who's president of the board in Fulton, he's going to see if he can set up like individual appointments with legislators. And then people, we could sign up to meet like one-on-one with them. But
Maybe the one on food items, is that only board members or like food service people, nurses, are they invited to that?
yeah, that he's gonna have a whole, John's setting up to have a whole panel so that we have representatives from all areas
Good.
in the districts, so
And
that
that'd be
everybody can
different
give their
than before.
perspective and share.
Could you send the board out an email with those?
Yes,
those
yep, I
dates?
absolutely will, yep.
Thank you.
So, that was everything for there. And then, the other thing was, I sent you guys the link, to that other, I don't know where my notes are, that other school district, I don't know if anybody had a chance to look at it. It was another school district that did a capital project, not similar to ours, but there were some similarities. But what I thought was cool was they did this Q&A, and I know that you said that you're working on that right now, but I sent it to you guys because there were a lot of really good questions in it. I don't know if anybody took the time to read through it, because I thought, you know, reading through everything that we just went through with him, and I just think it's important that not only do we fully understand, you know, I'm talking about the financial part of it, that the public does too, you know, and the more that the public understands all of the details of it, the easier it is for them to say, yes, we're gonna vote yes. So I just thought if you guys looked at that, like, you know, for example, like, I thought that one of the good questions was, you know, like when we had the presentation at the last meeting and talked about the debt fall off, and it's like, wow, it's so much information. And the way that they presented it in this particular school, and actually in their Project Pass too, so that was good news too. But they broke it out, and they said, you know, what is our bond, you know, debt situation currently? And then, you know, in the numbers, just the way that they break it down, it's hard to explain, you have to look at this. It's just very clear, you know what I mean? So there'd be a number of, this is where we are currently, this is where we would be after, and it's just all positive and easy
The
to
other thing
understand.
that was in there, that cued the question, was they make mention of a serial bond, but it doesn't show that it has like leverage against a particular building. And it's always been my understanding that our buildings are leveraged against these bonds. But these serial bonds say that there is no leverage, and that I need help interpreting it. My interpretation is that the serial bond could be consumed by another building if, you know, if we wanted to release a building, if we wanted to do that. So maybe you can help me understand that.
There's gonna be-
First, what kind of bond do we
Yeah.
have?
That's a good question. I wish we'd asked that when Brody was here.
Yeah.
We talked about at the last meeting that we're gonna have a series of board updates in terms of, to answer those types of questions. One would be
Right.
about bonding, one would be about environmental impact, one would be progress monitoring of the project. So that's one piece that goes to kind of your question, Jeff. But to Amy's point, starting tomorrow, we've already had several meetings with our public relations folks. Seth has already sat in on several of our facilities meetings, because we've been planning and gearing up for the next phase of this, which is marketing. And once the board approved the resolutions tonight, then we're gonna hit the ground running tomorrow with marketing. And you'll be given updates on marketing as well. Mass mailings, website design, question and answers, even on the website and on social media. So there's a lot of stuff that's gonna start happening tomorrow, now that the board is fully committed to the project. All the things, what you shared today is a perfect example of the types of things that we need to leverage the support of the community with, and that is information, so.
So then if we have like specific questions, like should I just ask you? I mean, I don't wanna put you on the spot right now, but I mean, like that question I said before, like the specifics of, you know, the where the bonds are that we owe now. And then the question that, because I was confused about that, because when I read through the resolution, it said it was like a go bond, which means there's no
What we can do
collateral.
is create
So
a
how-
graphic
Yeah, I don't think you
that
could
shows-
possibly describe to us
No.
the way that the bonds
We-
are, or how they're gonna
What we can
fall
do
off,
is we
right?
can show,
Well, it's like going to
there's almost a
school.
Gantt
Yeah,
chart of,
right.
Actually, we have actually a spreadsheet of
Yeah.
all of our bonds.
Which-
The bonds for the buses, the bonds for the energy performance contract, all of them, and we have them, actually a chart that shows when all of that debt is falling off.
Oh, see, that'd be
Didn't
good.
you
Yeah.
give that
Also-
to us
I did.
before? We
I
got
did.
that
It-
before.
Probably 6 or 7 months ago,
Yeah.
right? And
Uh-huh.
I remember going to
Yeah.
one particular meeting with the facilities,
Mhm.
and that's when it was first initiated to me. And it was pretty blurry, because there was a lot of information in a very
Right.
condensed time.
Right.
But that'd be great.
the other
Yeah.
thing that is important for the board to be reminded is that I'm working on a long-range financial report. It's gonna be rolled out before the end of the year that has all of those different elements and tabs in it. That will talk about debt fall off, it'll talk about bonding, it'll talk about the capital project, it'll talk about our capital reserve and our other reserves, the use of reserves and fund balance, a trend from, our budget trends from 2014 to 2018. Those are all elements that are gonna be in there. But to answer your question on the short-term meeting, any question that you might have specific to types of bonds, anything specific to our capital project, or even in general, send to Nancy, and then, she can address those in front of the whole board at a meeting.
And what I'll also do is keep a running log of all of the questions, and if the board deems it, we can put it out on a public Q&A as well.
Right, yeah, I just think that that's good, because like you said, and like I said, it's like, when you see, it's so much to understand, and if it's hard for us to understand and we talk about it, I can't
Community
imagine
won't.
what the community is doing, so
Yeah,
I think
right,
if
right.
it's like, those books, like grammar for dummies and stuff like that, like, really make it very, very simple, like how they did at this school, that you read it and you're like, oh my gosh, this makes total sense, 100% sense. So that was really,
I understood your point, I
Yeah.
understood what you were trying to do,
yeah,
and
Yeah.
I'm doing the best I can to assure you that we're
Yeah.
gonna do that.
okay, I just think that it's good for everybody to
It was a
give their
good
input.
example.
I read through it, and the board president put out a letter to start out the beginning of the brochure, and I assume what we put in our brochure, like similar to what we do for a budget.
Exactly, we do a budget flyer, we'll do something similar for the capital project that has a message from me, we'll have a message from Amy. It articulates through our PR folks exactly the points that we think are most important.
And I've got some
Full
examples
of
with me of
information.
stuff like that, if you'd like to
Yeah.
see them.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good.
All right.
I gotta just make sure there's not anything else. I feel like there was one more thing I was gonna say. Oh, I know, we had other meetings to set up the policy
Yep,
committee.
yep,
I
they're
don't know
gonna
if
be
we
coming
have
from
any
Karen.
dates on the horizon, or?
We don't,
Yes.
we haven't
We
set
do
a
have-
date up yet.
We're gonna have, I said after the first of the year,
Yep,
and those are they're gonna be coming out this week's been crazy.
okay. And then the same thing with the capital project, we'll have a meeting coming up soon? then?
Yep.
Okay, great.
We wanna talk-
We wanted to get the capital project approved tonight,
Mhm.
and now we're gonna get moving. I will say that, you're gonna get an automated message at 7:00 that all Oswego County schools are closed tomorrow. So there's a little
Good
sneak
Oh,
preview
really?
on the rest of the
My
week.
kids told me to ask you that.
Yeah. Got the answer.
Kids, snow calculator said 99.9.
They're like
You're gonna get an
that.
auto message from me at 7:05.
Yeah.
Cool.
To,
Tell them not to send their letters.
How many days have we
Ready
worked?
to start third.
Yeah.
Yeah,
because while we're here, I want to clarify.
Halfway
Not that, that's what I just said, it's not.
Yeah, I gotta have some.
Maybe that's 10 minutes later.
Yes.
Yes.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah,
Guys.
whack your gavel, bring them on.
There you go.
That was a nice.
Sam suggested that you have some open conversation, that we revisit. There were two conversations. The main conversation happened at Minetto, where there was, I think, mutual agreement at that time that if two or more board members had a conflict with a meeting, that the board would collaboratively decide on an alternative date. Then we had a little mix-up at the last meeting because we believed that it was the board's wish to change this week's meeting. There was a lot of confusion. I think you have to establish through an open conversation now, what are you gonna do when there's conflicts with meetings? My recommendation is, if you can't make a meeting, and I said this at Minetto, If we have a board member that can't make a meeting, there's no judgments made. The business of the board continues. However, if multiple board members have a conflict with a meeting, then you have to determine how you want to move forward from that. So I just open it up to
Okay,
you
you
guys.
gotta define multiple.
Well, and I
More
think
than
if you
four.
don't have a quorum,
Yeah,
to be able to vote on something,
Right.
that would constitute changing a meeting.
Right, as long as you've got a
Short of
quorum, the
that.
meeting goes on.
short of that.
You
leave it.
could, right,
Yeah.
you run
Okay.
your business.
Yeah, normal scheduled meetings, other than.
So it'd have to be
other than
3 or
not.
more
Correct.
missing.
Have to be
More
four or
than 3.
4 or
Four.
more,
Four or more.
Yeah.
because you have to have 4.
Which hardly would ever
Okay.
happen.
I
Which
said
would
that
almost
backwards.
never happen.
Right.
Um,
Okay,
So I'm gonna confirm that if there is a quorum, the meeting will go on.
Yes.
as scheduled.
As scheduled.
That's
Okay,
the will
now
of the
that
board.
brings up
Yeah,
another
well,
issue.
the only question, the only issue I have with that, and this happened last year, when I was gone during the budget, budget building portion, and I missed like a really big meeting, and the meeting didn't get changed. So I would hope that in the future, that in a scenario like that, when it's a meeting that's, I think everybody's voice should be heard, just like I felt that way about this meeting, that we all needed to be here for
Well, I
this.
think that,
So-
I think,
Don't think you can make exceptions,
I-
you say, all meetings are gonna go on as long as there's a quorum.
That's
If you don't make it, you don't make it.
If we're gonna plan some special event with our family or whatever it is, then I would say that we should reach out in front of it and say, is there something, is the sky gonna fall on July 6th when we're gonna have a meeting or whatever? And if it is, well then, you know, we'll have to make that decision. But I seriously, I really don't wanna move the meeting. I wanna leave it Tuesdays, 5.
Well,
I agree.
can I just say though, when
Yep.
we go into 2018-19 school year, we, as a group, talk in advance, because that's what you in spot Rhonda, but when we think about meeting things, are Mondays really a major sport day for high school? I mean,
It depends, all those scheduling, we have 3 scheduling meetings set up, so if you guys.
Seems like out of the years, like my kids have played numerous sports, some, like Mondays always seem to be the day where there's not, like a lot of conflict.
But a lot of times Monday is the makeup day.
Well,
You get
and
snow
it's not
out.
only sports, but you
Yeah.
also
I
have
understand.
Musicals.
chorus, and you have all the arts, and that's why, you know,
but you make, the board decides what night to meet on. So you can have that conversation in
Yeah.
I
June.
understand that over
Exactly.
years, it wasn't
Decide
always,
when do you want to meet.
and it wasn't always Tuesdays at 5 o'clock.
No,
No.
and
And we could make
all
them
I
later,
want
they don't
is
even have to
whatever
be
we
in 5.
pick,
Right.
I
that's
agree.
what it is.
I agree.
Just it.
Whatever we pick, that's what it is. If you can make it, great.
Whatever day, whatever time, that's up to us.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
When I first came on the board, the meetings were at 7 o'clock.
ugh,
Mhm.
I'm in bed by
Yeah.
8.
My first board meeting went to 20 after 11.
We're doing a lot better than that.
At a
aren't
few
we?
more a.m.
We do a lot better now.
Yeah.
Okay,
is-
so,
Is that the will of the board?
Restate.
For the remainder of this school year, we will stay with the scheduled meetings
right,
unless a quorum is not held,
Yeah.
right.
okay?
Or it's determined that because of whether it's dangerous.
And then at the beginning of the 18-19 year, we'll have another discussion if we wanna change it or.
In June, we can talk about the day and time for the following year.
Okay, that brings up one more issue. Special meetings. On occasion, we have to call a special meeting,
Yep.
and Karen sent out emails, who's available, what's available.
Yep.
What do we do there? As soon as she gets four positives, yes, we can make it, the meeting is set, or do we have to keep screwing around for 2 days via email, trying to
That's
decide?
kind of why I asked the question today about the meetings, like, I wish we could just set them while we're here, rather than emails.
Well, we can't do that with special meetings,
Yeah.
because we don't know.
Well,
when
yeah,
we're
well,
gonna
those,
do-
but I'm saying like committee meetings and things like, if we could set those up here, everybody could pull up their calendar and then, rather than, I mean,
Well,
the
it's
email
not-
changes.
They are
that
set
too.
up.
It's not that simple with facility or with policy, because policies come in through Area 1 when they come, and I'm doing a full review of all the policies, and I wanna read them in a batch first, and then we present them to the policy committee, and then first they go to administrators too, to provide, get their input. So standing meetings aren't the most efficient way to do that, because we don't always have work for the committee. And we don't have the board-based committees anymore, so we have policy and facilities. But we're gonna set some meetings for policy soon. Facility's gonna be meeting constantly. Well, they have been meeting constantly.
Yeah. we've
Almost
only had, a-
weekly.
we've only had a break because we're waiting for the vote.
For the
right?
approval.
Yeah.
That's
Right.
it. The
Yeah.
rest of it was,
Right,
it was
yeah.
a couple times.
Yeah, once it gets going, it's every week.
But
Oh, yeah.
to go back
Maybe
to
more.
Sam's question about special meetings, it's not a problem for
Unless they
us
call it
to
special.
try to get consensus on a
We've
special
got it.
meeting. We can take a day or two to try to gather as many available people as we
Yeah,
can.
but my point is, we don't need
I don't want to be back then.
I don't think we need 7 people to be at a special meeting.
No.
We're the- Right.
Right, yeah.
Is that agree? Quorum for a special meeting also?
Mhm.
Most board members prefer a special meeting be at 4 or 5 o'clock rather than morning?
King.
Historically, since
Yeah.
I've been in
They'll
central
recommend.
office, special meetings are at 9 or 10
They
a.m.
work with them all.
I don't think that
But I
suits
mean, they
this board.
work,
4 or
so
5.
4 or 5
5,
would be,
yeah.
yeah,
Better.
4 or 5.
4 or 5.
Morning special meetings aren't good
No.
for some of you.
No.
Not for
4 or
those
5
guys.
o'clock.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Would there be any other items from the board? Dr. Dewey, would there be a need for an executive session tonight? Could I have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? You may adjourn. You're welcome. All set? We'll now call this meeting to order. Amy Callan. Here. James Bell.
Here.
Brian Chetney.